Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for April 2nd. So this week I've titled Work Like a Boss because this week there is this focus around being very diligent and really working towards something that's very important to you. And this week when you do that, you can actually make a lot of progress. So I'm excited to share this astrology with you, and then I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So first things first, on Monday, Mars is going to conjunct Saturn. And so this is kind of an intense combination because Mars is about drive and ambition. It's about going after things. Mars also represents our ability to set boundaries, to say what's okay and what's not okay, or to cut out things that are not good for us. And then Saturn, in contrast, is about devotion and hard work and doing things one step at a time. Saturn represents the things in our lives that are stable, that are a foundation and a source of the structure that we live our lives by. And so for that reason, Saturn is also to a certain extent related to boundaries and to time and to the limitations that we have, and then the limitations that we set on our lives. So this combination together, there's like this heavy focus on drive and ambition and wanting to, you may feel this week like you want to really push yourself, like you want to push the limits. It may also feel on the problematic side like things are overwhelming, like you have too much to do, like there's all of the things, and then either not enough time, or you may feel like another possibility with this is sometimes people feel like power is being exerted over them. So this could look like a boss that's being unreasonable with assignments and things like that. It could be a partner or even just a person in your life that feels like, where it feels like the responsibilities are unreasonable. And so I'll share with you in the tips how to manage that, but just know that that is normal. That's not to say that you will feel that way this week, but that's something that can happen when we have Mars and Saturn involved, especially Saturn, because Saturn is like, okay, where is the boundary line? How are you using your time? And how are you going to dedicate yourself to something? Can you dedicate to yourself? Can you dedicate yourself to the things that you have committed to already? The other aspect of this is that Mercury is going to square Mars and Saturn. And so Mercury is still in the sign of Aries. Mercury is still retrograde also. So there's this certain element of the mind, thought process, Mercury, which is retrograde, which is about reviewing things. So we're in, this is week 2. So we have this week and then next week that Mercury is retrograde, where it's beneficial to review things, to like retool things, to be really conscious of how it is that you communicate. And so what's really interesting with this is that we have Mars and Saturn, which is about how are you using your time, how are you using your energy, where are you drawing boundaries, how are you applying yourself towards something that's important to you. And then Mercury retrograde is like, hey, like, what do you think about this? And what I feel like this could really look like this week is working out some of the logistics in your life, whether that is planning or scheduling your time or communicating to people if you do feel overwhelmed, and like working out like, okay, what do I do with this? I feel like I really feel like this is a week where conversations may come up around duty and dedication and commitments, and what it is that you're working on this week. The little silver lining to this is that Venus will also trine Mars and Saturn, and so this Venus is in the sign of Taurus, and it's a trine, so it's like an effortless kind of feeling, and Venus represents values. And so what I would say, like a little trick for this week, is to really focus on what it is that you value, and especially around things that you're working on, things that you're committed to for the long haul. Like, how much do you value all of your commitments, how much do you value the long-term, like the long-term payoff of all of these things? And so that may be something helpful to like lean onto. I think that can help to bring some more clarity. And then also Venus and Saturn together, it's definitely a good time to connect with tradition. Venus is social connections, Saturn is things that are traditional. So if there's like a mentor or someone that you consider a teacher, someone that is wiser than you, it may be beneficial to reach out to that person at this time to seek guidance or inspiration and that kind of thing. And then last but not least, we have our last quarter moon in the sign of Capricorn. This happens on Saturday. And so it's kind of crazy because everything here all ties in, because the last quarter moon is in the sign of Capricorn. Mars and Saturn that I spoke about in the beginning are also in the sign of Capricorn. So last quarter moon, we're in the waning cycle. So that means letting go, allowing things to dissipate, and it means also like starting to bring your energy inward versus getting the word out and things like that. And so this may, I think towards the end of the week, there may be like a feeling of getting closure. There may be a feeling of like clarity around all of the things that came up earlier in the week, and like this feeling of cohesion as well, of like all of the pieces fitting together. So I know that sounds like kind of an intense week maybe, but I think it'll be really great. And then I have 3 tips that I want to share with you to really make the most of this. So number 1 is to be disciplined. This energy all week has discipline written all over it. So that doesn't mean that you need to work all day every day, but what I want you to think about is what are your like top 3 things that you're working on this week, and really discipline yourself towards that. Saturn rewards us when we choose the quote-unquote responsible thing to do versus the fun thing to do, but when you do the responsible thing, then that's when opportunities can open up, and then it builds like this really strong sense of confidence, which is really sweet. I think that's a possibility for this week as well, when you are disciplined and apply yourself. So that's tip number 1, to be disciplined. And tip number 2 is to be particular. And so what I mean by that is to be very particular with what it is that you are disciplining yourself towards. So I mean, maybe like if your closet needs to be cleaned out and you're like, I'm going to be disciplined about that, like, yeah, sure, go to town. But if you have other things that are more important that you're procrastinating on to discipline yourself towards the closet, like maybe that's not the best thing, is what I'm saying really here. So I want you to really focus on, like this goes back to what is it that you value over the long term? What's going to give you the best payoff? I want you to be very particular about how you spend your time this week, because time is limited, there's only so much to do, and it's up to you on how you apply yourself. I know we sometimes don't have complete control over our responsibilities and our time, but you have more power than you think in this arena. And then tip number 3 is to take it one step at a time. This is also Saturn this week all over it, because when you do things one step at a time, you can be disciplined, you can be particular. And this is a week where the vibe, like the energy movement, is one step at a time. You don't have to have everything done all at once. And when you do things one step at a time, you actually will gain a lot more momentum. Like that's really the feeling this week, is like, okay, when you do it, just focus on one little thing at a time. That's when things can start to build. Those are my 3 tips. And then I have, we're gonna draw a little animal card for you for some guidance for this week. So especially if there's something that you're working on this week, or something that you're kind of like trying to figure out, you can think about that as I'm shuffling these. I have not drawn this card yet. And this deck is the Animal Spirit deck from the Wild Unknown. And the cards are really fun and pretty. one. I pulled the Stingray. And so first, look at this card, just notice what comes to mind, and then I'll tell you what I think, what comes to mind for me. So the Stingray is very much about intuition and like following your gut senses, because the Stingray is an oceanic animal, it's a water animal, and what I really always think about with this card is how there's the different chakras here, the different energy centers. And I think it's cool that like his little gills or mouth or whatever that is, like are at the very top. So that's really interesting too. So what this says to me is that there is a strong, like, to lean on your intuitive senses. And then I think also, like, it's important to know at the end, like, because the mouth or his gills or whatever those things are at the top where the purple is, like, that to me is like, okay, it's important to grow spiritually and to think about those things, but it's also important to think about the practicality as well, because it's like, okay, how are you, like, feeding yourself? How are you taking in air and energy and oxygen? So like there's really this need to balance both, to balance your energy and then your material duties as well. So that's that. I hope that you enjoyed this week's astrology forecast. If you did, please share it with a friend. I like to get these messages out to as many people as possible. And then for more inspiration, you want to stay in touch with me more, you can follow me on Instagram under Neo-Feminine Astrology. And if you're interested in laying out your week and figuring out how to apply this astrology, not just for this week, but for the entire month or maybe even the entire year for you personally, you can contact me for an astrology reading. I'll have information down below on my website, so you can get in touch with me there. Until next time, I'm wishing you a wonderful week and sending lots of love. I will talk to you soon. Namaste.